Hey guys, let me take you through one of the shading that I made recently of a brass line. This is my final image, and this was the reference image that I used for creating the shader, and I'm happy to show you how I got here using Redshift in Maya. So yeah, this particular model was downloaded from Sketchfab by one of the author called RMN Grand Palais, and yeah, this is a downloadable model, so you can download it and try. The reason why I chose this model is I went into the wireframe and I noticed that the wireframe is a little bit mushy and not irregular, which ends up giving me really good cavity maps, which is the reason why I chose this model. If a model is really smooth and really clean, it doesn't give you the best cavity maps. So I'll show you why. So this is my model, and I have staged it like this, and I given a couple of morning, early, like midday light rigs, a few HDRIs. So let me show you how I layered a couple of textures and shaders to get the final look. So what I did first is I dropped in a base brass shader. Let me quickly show you this. Yeah, so I've dropped in a bit of brush shader, and the brush shader had a little bit of, so I can show you the brush shader. It's pretty simple. It has a it has a bit of, okay, let me take you through a curvature map at first. So I create a curvature map, and I use that to give some really nice matte between two objects, between two different shaders. So I use it for layering two different shaders. So what I do here is let me just show what I do. There's this node inside Redshift called the curvature node, which gives this really nice black and white cavity feel to it. So there are a couple of shader parameters that you can try it out, tweak to get this kind of an output. And you can see there's a little bit of displacement. Let me disable the displacement that I did once. So yeah, the feedback is pretty fast. So this is the curvature map. It gives this really nice dusty, dirty look to it. So how do I use this curvature map to get the result that I want? It's quite simple. You just create two shaders. One is the base brush shader, and the second one is the green dirt shader that I can show you. Give me a second, let me plug in. Give me a second, let me just pause this. Might crash. Oops. Let me quickly. Color dot. No, that's not the thing. I need to have yeah, sorry, I need to look for the green oxidized material. So let me just hook this thing up, just plug in this material into this, and I'll show you what this thing shows up. Yeah, so I did create a base oxidized material with a little bit of bump on the little bit of bump on the edges. So if you closely look into this, you see that there's a little bit of displacement and bump, and if you look into this image, there's a little bit of displacement and bump on the edges and during the in the cavities. So I had to go ahead and replicate the same look. So how do I do it? What did I do is I blended the cavity map with a noise map. Where did I take the noise map from? I took it from here. So I used a noise map. I can show you that. This is from Megascans. So I used one of the noise maps, I think. This it's AO, yeah, it's an AO ambient occlusion map from one of Megascans. I color corrected it inside Hypershade. I made it a little bit brighter, added contrast so that you can lift you can darken the grays. I did use triplanar mapping. This is a very simple map. Just plug in an image to the X and switch on the same image on every axis. So the same image is projected on every axis. So you are not dependent on any UVs anymore. So what I did was I took the curvature map and I took the triplanar map which I generated from the ambient occlusion, and let me show you what happened. So I multiplied both, and let me see. Okay, what I need to do is, let me show you what I did. So you see that I created a mat out of this, and I use this mat to basically, let me just reduce the, so I used this mat, I used the mat of two different after the whatever result I got from two different maps. I used that. I think I input, okay, so I don't need to input, I can just input the same to all three, so I get one. So you see that there's a difference between this and there's a let me just take a snapshot, let me pause it. The difference between this and there's a difference between so you see there's a difference between this and this. There's a little bit of breakup, not too much, but enough for you to add a breakup in the bump and the weathering. So in some areas it's pretty good, in some areas it shows up a lot, in some areas it doesn't. Well, that's the nature of the displays, that's the nature of the triplanar map with the combination of the curvature map. So it's good. I'm just creating a map. I'm creating a mat between two different by inputting two different maps, and I use that mat to layer things. So now life is a bit easy. I can use this one to create a little bit of a bump on the edges, which you will see that I have created. Give me a second. So I have created a bit of bump using that mat. You can invert the mat to give so I use that as a bump to break up the edges, and then what I did was I created a little bit of dust around the brush. When I layered two things, one thing on the other, I could see a little bit of dust on it. So I can show you what happens. So if I here what I did is I have the base brush as a base material, and I created the green oxidize as another layer on top of it. Then I used the mat of this to blend both. Let me show you. Now you can see that it's using the mat from the multiply of this curvature to blend both in, which is good. The biggest function of having layer shaders is you can create two different shaders or n number of shaders and use mats to mask one on top of each other, which is pretty powerful. You don't want to create too many shaders. It's just going to kill the render and kill the shader, but it's definitely going to give you something better than just using one texture, one shader, and trying to tweak a lot of things to get it working. Layer shaders is pretty powerful. You can use layer shaders inside Hypershade, or you can use Substance Designer to create some layer shaders. It's your call. I like to do it inside Hypershade most of the times. Some people like to do it in say Substance Designer or Quixel or Mixer or any other stuff. But yeah, this is one of the method that you can go for. And there's one more interesting thing that I also did. So when I rendered this character, what happened was I could see a bit of so the oxidization happens in the areas where it's pretty much exposed to water, rain, or any other elements which are wet. So usually it doesn't show up in the areas which are hidden away. So what I did was I created another ambient occlusion shader. So what I did was I created a dirt shader. Yeah, so I created a little bit of a dirt shader. Let me show it you here. Yeah. I do not like Hypershade for this reason. I just need to swap things around on the fly. So I created a little bit of a dirt shader, and you can use existing say brush shader as well. It's completely fine, but I just prefer to have it a little bit of dirt under it. So, and I used a little bit of and I used this as a base shader, and And then what I did was I used the ambient occlusion as a matte. You can see that I used the ambient occlusion as a matte, and I matted out a little bit. No, sorry. Let me drop this thing in. Yep. Hope it doesn't crash. No. So mine crashed. So which always happens. So let me show you what matte did I use for dropping in, for just adding a little bit of dirt underneath. So yeah, so let me, yeah. So this is the matte that I used to add a little bit of dust underneath. It is not a lot, but it just adds a little bit of dirt underneath. It just breaks up the way the darkness of the brass. It just breaks up the way the brass looks like on the underside. So, and then I used this one as a matte to basically put the dirt below it, and once I do it, this is what I get. So if I need to go back and show you, so let me summarize what I actually did. So I created a base brass material with the same similar reflection properties and specular properties of the reference image, and then I created a green material, an oxidized green material. So I had these two materials, one on top of each other, and I used the combination, and I used a curvature map which is multiplied on another say noise map, and use that as a matte. It's quite simple. It's just like Nuke or using multiply inside Photoshop, but it can give you some really good quality shaders. You can keep stacking different materials, and what I also did was I wanted to add a little bit of dirt from the underneath and make it a little bit having a feel of an ambient occlusion. So I used the ambient occlusion shader from Redshift and use that as a matte on top, and use that as a matte to layer another layer of dirt underneath it. So it's quite simple. You can have a stab at it, and you can let me know if you have any trouble. I'm happy to guide you. See ya.